Dreamed it? I haven't even been to bed. He had me in the moonlight? Keep pretty late hours around here, don't you? For a quiet place. Perhaps you consider it quiet. Personally, I don't. Margaret joined us on the front porch then, and was as much at a loss as we were. It doesn't seem possible, Louisa, she said, with a worried frown. I got Father's revolver, and Emily and I went up to the cedar room. The ladder is where it ought to be, and nothing has been disturbed. I explained to the officer. Both the Lancaster house and ours have on the third floor a small cedar room, with a trapdoor in the ceiling, and each house keeps in the cedar room a portable ladder for the use of the men who periodically go over the roofs and paint the gutters. It was to this ladder that Margaret referred, and to this room that she took the policeman while I went back home. Only a few minutes later I saw the officer himself on the flat roof and staring about him, but apparently he discovered nothing suspicious, and soon he too disappeared. That was, as I have said, on Friday night, or rather early Saturday morning. It was 2:30 when at last I crawled into bed, and fell into the sleep of utter exhaustion. Chapter 16. We do not oversleep in the Crescent, no matter what our nights have been, and as I think I have said, we breakfast downstairs. Mother was better that next morning, Saturday, and we were still at the table when Miss Margaret came over and through the French door into the dining room. She was shrouded in black, even to her hat with its crepe-edged veil, and although it was not yet 9 we knew she was ready for the ordeal of the inquest. She had come to ask if Holmes could or would stay in the house while they were all gone. It will be safe enough, she said, and I have never left the house empty. You see, we all have to go, even the maids. Of course, Margaret, Mother agreed. Although I'd as soon put a rabbit on guard. Still, if you want him, certainly. Louisa can go with the Daltons, although why she should want to go at all I cannot understand. Emily, Margaret said, was still asleep and not well. She had been in a sort of daze for the last 2 days, and she would not rouse her until the last minute. Upon which Mother insisted on ordering some creamed chicken prepared and sent over later, and by going back to speak to Mary left us alone for a minute or two. I can still see Margaret suddenly throwing back her veil and bending toward me. "Tell me something, Louisa," she said in a low voice. Just what did you see on our roof last night? I don't know, I said honestly. It looked like a man, on his hands and knees. On his hands and knees, she repeated, astonished. Just crawling about, you mean? He seemed to be that way so he could get to the edge, for safety. Or so I thought. And when he got to the edge? I thought he looked over, into the gutter. You didn't dream all this? I hadn't even been to bed, Miss Margaret, I said. At 2 in the morning? Her keen eyes searched my face, and I felt myself coloring. I've been worried. Naturally. That seemed to satisfy her, for she drew down her veil again and nodded. Jim, of course. Well, Louisa, I wish you'd keep it to yourself. The servants are ready to bolt at any minute anyhow. And you may be wrong. By the time I'd got Father's revolver, and Emily and I got to the cedar room, the trap was fastened and the ladder where it belongs. I've convinced Emily that you had a nightmare, so it would better rest at that. I wouldn't even talk to her about it. Or to anybody. And of course I agreed. Perhaps in writing all of this I have left out too much of the excitement our murder had caused, have said too little of the curious crowds which were held back at the gate by a uniformed policeman, but which had discovered Euclid Street and no man's land, and had periodically to be driven out of the latter, have ignored the press, bored and in the summer doldrums and so now in a state of hysterical excitement. And it is possible too that I have underestimated the local importance of the Crescent families. Every city I dare say has its group of old families which in their day have written the local history. In time they pass out of the social columns and into the obituary, indeed sometimes they have to die to be remembered. Nevertheless, the names still are important, and even their ordinary deaths are news.